information for department heads for FY17, so budget memo, calendar, and the budgets. Plan will be, we'll kind of chew those up tonight, spit out whatever we spit out, and then come back next, 2 weeks from today, and with final versions of those that we can just sign off on for disbursement for the end of October. So department heads have more than enough advance to start to look at those and go through those. Why don't we start with, I think, the easiest things, which are the budget easy template and the itemized template. Let's go to the easy template first. I went through today, so everybody everybody's aware, and on the Google Drive, went to the, added under the FY17 a folder, and then there's budget templates, and that has the 4 documents that we use. All I did on those documents on the template was update from dates from FY16s to FY17s and so on and so forth, so that the dates are accurate. Nothing else in terms of format or content within the easy template. Any thoughts, comments on the easy template? All right, that's easy. Same thing on the itemized template. Went through and just updated the dates on it. Some things just to remember that we added last year was the number of anticipated retirees, as well as the expense breakdown, so that if ever we're able to start aligning and breaking out some expenses, having at least that data will be helpful to some extent. Anything on the itemized template that we should be adjusting? Does anybody notice or remember from last year?
No, I remember, Kevin, we were asking for level service and then kind of a wish list type. We've stopped that.
Yeah, we'll get into the memo in a second, so we can kind of go over that. But in terms of, I think the goal is always that we get one request.
Yep.
One, I think a couple years ago we got 2 and 3, and then it was like some departments did, some departments didn't. It was too much. So we'll get into what exactly where we want to use for a baseline. But there's one budget that we want them to submit, and then we'll get into how we want them to separately. I think separately, really, on the bigger departments. Again, it's the easy template is really they're providing a service today. What's the cost of that service next year?
When are you going to distribute the templates?
Hopefully by the end of before the end of October.
Before the end of October?
That's our goal.
Okay, great. Okay.
Much earlier than in the past. Jump to any questions on the itemized template? No? Okay. The budgeting calendar. After last week's meeting, we had some feedback. So what I did was first went through and updated, so everything was 2016 dates, which until February 29th, you just go back 1 day, and then after February 29th, go back 2 days. If you remember that. What I did as a draft version for us tonight was combine as we said last meeting, kind of combine some departments, some areas, leave some meetings sort of open to give us some flexibility, maybe for skipping a meeting or a very short meeting. So January 4th, we meet like we always do, kind of go over the budgets that we've gotten, discuss the revenues, and sort of how things are going, and a nice kickoff back from the holidays and a longer break. January 11th, we'll come back and we will do the selectmen oversight departments. So it's the selectmen, the town administrator, town council, animal control. Along that night also, we do services. So we would do council on aging, library, recreation, historical, celebration, forest, planning. And then the inspectional services is that night. And the inspectional services, which I guess is under the direction of board of selectmen, is all the planning, conservation, building, wiring, plumbing, and weights. So it's listed out there, but it's really one department head that comes to us now and presents that budget. So we'll clean that up. So it's just inspectional services. So that's one night. So it's a good sized night, but again, they're relatively quick, 5 and 10 and 15-minute budgets. The following week is Martin Luther King, so we would have off. The week after that, I would leave open. So that gives us some flexibility. People couldn't make it that other week, as well as we have snow days now kind of built in as we need them. We would come back February 1st and we would meet with the financial departments. So the finance committee, accountant, treasurer, as well as the elected government. So that being the town clerk, along with the elections, board of registrars, town reports, and then I've got inspectional services there, but then I've got inspectional services up above, so I think the inspectional services should be with the selectmen oversight, since it's under the selectmen oversight. So that would be really, financial departments and town clerk, I guess, is really what that February 1st night would be. The intent of that night. Then the following week, February 8th, we come back, public safety, so public safety gets a whole block unto itself. The following week is a holiday, President's Day. We can come back February 22nd, meet with Holbrook Public Schools. So as he tried to do last year, trying to push that off further into the calendar. February 22nd, February 29th, as the town's birthday, would be an open day, so one of those snow days and flexible days for us. March 7th, we'd come back, Holbrook Public Works, which includes all the enterprise. March 14th is Blue Hills / Norfolk Aggie, who said last year that they were willing to come to us, so we'll make sure to extend an invitation. March 21st would be Capital Planning Committee. So we're putting them off sort of as far into the process as we can, but at that point, we need to have some numbers or some sort of report. And then March 28th, we would begin further deliberations into in-depth of the budget and preparation. So anything at first blush, anybody seems sort of not make sense or need to adjust? Obviously, we're not going to set this in stone, but just for first impressions of anything. Okay, I'm going to continue on then. Feel free to, if something pops into your head as we're here tonight. The budget preparation memo. So all I started with was taking the FY16 memo, changing the header and the date on it, and changing the dates within it so that any dates are relevant to this fiscal year. I stripped out, I don't have the exact sentence, but I stripped out something about how we've been able to keep the tax rate lower in check, because I don't know exactly where we are with that, so I don't want to put that out there, but starts off basically, thanking the department heads for their participation through the FY16 budget cycle and for working together as a team. With everyone working together, Holbrook has now had a solid positive free cash several consecutive years as a result of both conservative estimates for revenues and the hard work of department heads working to keep expenses in check. As you know, the Finance Committee does not implement a use it or lose it budgetary policy. In many towns, if you don't spend your budget, it is taken away in the base of the next budget cycle. We try to dig deeper and ask what is really needed to provide the greatest level of service for what taxpayers are paying for. To date, the Finance Committee has not received any good projections regarding revenues for the FY17 fiscal year. Based on recent published reports from the state concerning revenues for the first quarter, we anticipate FY17 to be a relatively flat year financially for state aid. I know if we all remain committed to the goal of providing the most efficient government for the residents, we can again present a balanced budget that town meeting can support as overwhelmingly as they have the last few years. We are requesting one formal budget prepared by each department for submission to our committee. We request a budget that would maintain existing service levels and only expand where a clear need can be shown. If expanding beyond existing services, please provide data and supporting documents for why an expansion is needed and how the effectiveness of such expansion will be monitored moving forward. The budget should take into account all existing positions and any anticipated increases / changes to salaries. Your budget request should be inclusive of all expenses within your department. The request should account for any changes in expenses needed to provide the same level of services as FY16. We have established two budget formats for departments for FY16, a budget easy and a budget itemized. The budget easy template should only be used by any department requesting a total budget of less than $200,000 and has no net increase in employee headcount. All other departments shall complete the budget itemized template. For those departments that complete a budget itemized template, please provide a specific list of items in order of priority that would be reduced in the event we need to achieve a level funded budget in your department. Furthermore, we have added space on both templates that seek your assistance in providing the number of anticipated retirements in each of the next 3 years, along with their current accrued sick time. We are exploring adding a new budget line item for sick leave buyback and need information to provide a good plan. We will use this as a guide in future analysis, and this does not force any employee to retire, nor does it prevent any employee from retiring prior to your assumptions. Salary line items including requests shall include a salary paid, shall include all salary paid, including longevity, overtime, stipends, etc. The committee does not plan to approve any year-end transfer requests to fund these types of salary adjustments above what is funded in the budgets provided by town meeting. During the FinCom review of budgets, we will follow the same format as last year by reviewing like departments' budgets at the same time. The review schedule is attached. Please communicate any schedule conflicts, and we will do our best to reschedule your department budget review. We request all budgets and supporting documents be submitted to the committee by December 25th. Furthermore, they be submitted electronically to aid in disbursement and tracking. The town bylaw require that all budget requests be submitted to the FinCom by December 31st. All budgets and supporting documents should be sent to the email address, and I will distribute to the other committee members. Please communicate any questions or concerns you may have, and we will do our best to address them. So that's the basic template we used last year. Level service is the baseline, and for any departments that are over $200,000, that are the bigger departments, that we also request them to give us some backup for if we can't provide level services, what do they start to shave off to get to that level fund? Because obviously, I think as we went through the process last year, those are the areas that you have the flexibility to do something. You have a lot less flexibility within those budget easy departments, if you will, that they don't have as much skin to cut, if you will, or anything to cut there without significant impact. So yes, we would look at those if we needed to get there, but those are a lot easier for us to understand that a cut means so many hours per position. That's basically what those budget easy departments are. The itemized, they have a little more flexibility to mean what person, what personnel, how would you go about it. We don't know at this point how the budget's going to shake out. A big factor for us is state aid. And a big factor for state aid is our October 1st enrollment figures, because that plays a lot into the Chapter 70 money which we get. And as we found last year, it can mean a several $100,000 swing if October 1st numbers aren't increasing. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a significant increase in October 1st based on the information that the schools has anecdotally told us about what happened halfway through last year, and that it was a blip in the radar. And kindergarten, I know that this year kindergarten is up. They had to add on a whole new teacher over there, so hopefully that'll mean figures for FY17 will be reflective, or revenues for FY17 will be reflective of that. But start out with level service, I think. What's the committee's take on this sort of direction that we used last year?
I read the memo before, I thought it was fine, but I had a thought, since we kind of use the same template every year, do people really reading it all? And do you just deliver this via email? I think you do, right?
I do, but typically the town administrator has had a department head meeting and communicated the same thing.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure the part about everything about, you just said about why we use one budget because it's basically too hard, but prepare for level service, okay. If that was that, message just communicate, I don't care if it's town administrator. I didn't want to rely on reading the memos, all I was trying to say.
And I hope that by getting this out in October,
Yeah.
and having less meetings ourselves and less to do, that allows the subcommittees to schedule the times I would like the subcommittees to meet with the department heads in November and December to kind of help them through this process, and then be able to follow up with them in the first quarter and set themselves up that we're the liaison as you go through this process, this is what we're asking for, kind of dig into a little bit, because the preliminary, they ask you questions, well, I really wanted to add this service or something, so you can kind of help guide them through the process of presenting that and what might be needed. Mm-hmm. I think a big thing that we've wanted to implement is metrics. When we expand services, follow up 6 months, a year from now, how did that go? Have some real targets of what the expectation was of that service it was going to provide, whether it's adding services at the Council on Aging, and what's the number of customers that we see in that facility, or whether it's adding a detective, and what's the crime rate or the solve rate, or whatever the metrics are that the department heads want to put in place, but some real metrics, and we can judge, and maybe, you know, if it works, great, then we want to do more of it, and if it didn't work, then that's great, we don't mind trying things, but we don't want to keep doing something if it didn't work. Anything else from seeing this that we want to do differently, or make sure that we add, or topics that we want to add? So, and the one thing we had at the last meeting, we said that, are there topics that we want to make sure that are global, so that all department heads, it's included in the memo, we want all department heads to sort of react to it, or give us some information, or be prepared when they come to meet with us to answer a question. And then also specific questions for specific subcommittees. And again, we don't need to have those tonight, but I think for our next meeting, we'd want to make sure that we have any of those specific questions, because I want to have those, like I say, start scheduling those meetings so that they can get out to the department heads. Obviously, we'll have a new town administrator in the next 30 to 45 days, depending on, you know, signing of contracts and resignations in other positions, and leaving positions, but I want us to get ahead of the curve, if you will.
I had a question for capital planning. Would it help you if, when we met with our departments, if we got an inventory of their capital assets? 'Cause I don't,
Yes, and we actually have a form. I'll have to dig it up. I can't connect to the internet for whatever reason, but I'll make a note to get the form that we used last year.
okay.
Anything other than that form? You said, like, that form is what they currently have, or what they're gonna need, or both?
The form is basically, it's one request per form, and it's basically kind of, what do you need, how much does it cost, what's the benefit, that type of, and it's basically one form per request. So
Basically,
if-
what you're asking, if we meet with them in November, December, tell them now's the time to ask, and not wait till March 1st.
yes.
Is the capital planning meeting yet? Do you have a full committee on the capital planning yet, do you know?
I think somebody dropped off, and then we did have a meeting like the first week in September, but I was running late and it was finished before I got there, so it was pretty quick.
So Susan, your template is if there's a capital improvement ask.
Yes.
Okay, as far as an inventory goes, is there any template for that, to collect an inventory when we go meet with the police chief? Number of vehicles, other big capital improvements?
No, we do have, we have that list that Cindy, you gave us last year in regards to, the payment terms, and it's like a line itemization of our capital spend.
There's a line item for each capital project. Right. You should have.
For a capital project that's ongoing. Right.
Okay.
That's been funded and is currently,
I sent out letters to every department, because some expenditures, when some line items were not expended, I had, you know, there's a real criteria for capital improvement. And it's etched in stone, and, you know, I'm waiting, so put it that way. I consider it an article just like any other article, use it or lose it. You know, I don't know how long you can carry it over, unless you have some contract that hasn't been fulfilled. I just don't get it, you know, I don't. I know I've heard from emergency management, because there's a carryover, he had 50,000, and he's waiting for one more piece of that equipment, which would bring it, he's got 10,000 carried over. And so, I mean, I can understand that, but anything else is, you know, unless it's a lease program, I don't know what's going on.
there's some dollars, I think what Cindy's referring to is there are some dollars that are more like a placeholder, as opposed to for something definitive that's already in progress of being paid off.
So do they update you, through your committee, the progress on something they purchased, or what they spend the money on, so you know, that your committee knows whether it's been fulfilled or not?
We get Cindy provides us with actuals, and like there was one department in this, I call it a non-committed, I mean, the dollars are committed, but there was no spend as of, I think it was the July or June report.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. As of the June or July report, there was, I recall, at least one line item that did not have any dollars spent toward it.
For July on? Is that what,
No, actually, it must have been May or June, because it would have been in last year's.
just last year's
Yeah.
bottom line is bottom line? I know the town hall project, which is this, they're gonna take care of the acoustics in here, which is what they need to do, because I can't hear two hearing aids on.
But I think,
But I don't think any dollars have been officially
I'm sorry,
allocated to do that.
allocate.
I don't believe that any dollars were officially allocated to do that, were they?
To this?
For this,
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This
Oh,
is
yes. The
balance.
whole town hall project was $300,000, and it was for this building alone.
so what happens sometimes with capital is a project like this, that we get an estimate, go to town meeting, try to be conservative, say, okay, $350,000 to do this building. They do the build out right now, I don't know, was it $20,000 is left, or X number of dollars are left. So we only spent $330,000, say, to get it to this state. So there's $20,000 left that's allocated for this project, but it's open. So Cindy's point is Cindy has to review that and say, and really, I think it should be the capital improvement planning committee, looks at that and reviews that with whoever the stakeholder is in that and says, hey, you've got $20,000, are you actually gonna spend it or not? And if they're, gonna, well, maybe we're gonna do, something down, well, that's not legitimate, but if they say, yeah, we've got $20,000 because
Right.
we gotta do some more carpet and we gotta do this and that, okay, then that's legitimate. And if they haven't spent any of the money, but whatever it is, they have to come back to you
Right.
on an annualized basis and say, hey, yes, we still need that money, we're just waiting on the architect to get back to us and yada, 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 okay? And if not, then you would present it to town meeting and say, okay, we want to rescind that money and do something else with it.
Right.
It should be treated as any article,
Right.
as any article. Every year you review it,
Mhm.
and there's a time frame involved and everything. You can't be carrying articles over for 15 years, I
Mhm.
mean, I send out a message every June and say, these are, what articles, and tell me why. If not, we're closing them out.
So I think the capital planning committee, with your help a lot, started to put some formats and templates in place, and I think that's why I think we wanted to put you back on that committee to
Thank you.
continue that path and not to shift around and, put somebody else in with, you had some great ideas, and I think that we wanted to help you do that. So I think to Mike's point, if in the next week or two, you want to get us those templates for the subcommittees to go out, or a memo that when they go, so at least the finance committee acting on, not on behalf of, but in conjunction with the capital planning committee, meeting with those subcommittees can answer some questions, help facilitate, and help stress also that there's a deadline that those capital planning budgets are supposed to be submitted by, I would say the same time frame, by December 31st at the latest. That way you guys have a couple of months to review those, and put a plan in place.
Goes before town meeting, just like any article. It's used for that specific purpose. If not, it gets closed out.
Mhm.
And then the money goes back into capital improvement for someone else that needs, another department that
Right.
needs, for their needs,
Mhm.
I mean,
And I
That's
don't
it.
think we have enough structure on the committee to,
what, Susan?
I don't believe we have the structure and the frequency of the committee to meet that requirement right now. We have to improve upon that.
We should have a capital
Should,
planning committee.
when we go have our subcommittee meetings, can we have that information so that we can, of what is outstanding, whatever subcommittee we're on, for instance, in the schools, or whatever else, whatever they have outstanding,
Mhm.
we can have that conversation with them as well.
Yes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch base with the head of the capital planning committee, let him know that we had this conversation and how I'd like to proceed, which is to provide you a copy of the form, and then we'll go from there.
It'd be nice, I wanna sit down and say, okay, you have 25 for this.
Do you need it? Do you want it?
When are you gonna be doing it? You haven't finished, one month.
Yeah,
I
we
think
don't-
at a minimum, even if we need some capital planning, I'll call it intervention or action, at a minimum, I could take the form and like put draft or something on it, so at least you can have a copy of it to socialize with your particular groups. And then that way, if the form does change or whatever the process turns out to be, at least they have the bulk of the information.
Yeah.
At least they're already thinking about, because I can't imagine that the form would change that much, if at all.
I'm sure you're familiar with the fire department capital plan, because it's actually laid out over like a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
And the police department did the same thing, and the public works, I don't know about the other department, but those are the three major departments that have a lot of equipment. So it gives the capital planning people and the finance committee and town meeting an opportunity to look at what's being in the queue to be replaced. It also provides the department had a chance to stop expending money on the vehicle if it's scheduled to be replaced. So it's those three departments I'm familiar with that have lists that are current. And the spreadsheet that Susan mentioned that Cindy has shows what's been approved, what the annual payments are, and how those payments, as they come off the books, even if the payments were to stay the same, you could allocate a little bit of money. So, I mean, it does work well, it really does. And over the years, in the last, 7 or 8, 10 years, it's really made dramatic improvements in being able to project out and plan, so.
Not to bring it up, but I'd like to think that one of the things I understood was that the schools, when they go in the new building, should have that type of maintenance plan, and we brought it up here, and Susan brought it up on occasion, saying what you plan, I believe it's part of the deal, you're supposed to have some kind of a maintenance budget, whatever else, so now they have a new building, they'll schedule out, hey, it's a new building, shouldn't give a lot of breakdown, but in 5 years, we're gonna know this is the type of stuff we're gonna start expecting, so I anticipate that, I think it's been discussed once, that that's what they have to get on the same type of program that the other three of the major budgets are in, so that's what I anticipate. It's making excuses.
Not to go too far off on a tangent, but you mentioned schools and maintenance. One thing that some towns have done, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is the maintenance of the school facility is not under the direction of the school committee. It's under the direction of the town facility, whether it's the public works department or some towns have a facilities department that takes care of, not roads and sidewalks, but buildings and that kind of thing. And from my standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. We shouldn't be trying to force a school committee and a superintendent to figure out how to run a building. And what's the best way to be running the building and how to budget maintenance and all that kind of stuff. That's, and you can say, well, they have a maintenance person underneath them and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's still that person and that group of people that have to oversee that as opposed to, so I'm just throwing it out there again. I don't know what the permanent school building committee's take is on it, and that's really up to them to make.
The facility director, he's very, very good, like, and, part of getting this whole new building is that they require to put money into maintenance. It's a requirement. Now, I just can't remember exactly what it is, but where it's coming from, I'm not sure it's a chapter 70 or some, whatever money we get in every year.
Percentage of the.
10% has to be put aside for maintenance. So I'm almost wondering if the school should have a line item for that, so that we can always see that percentage as it comes in goes right there to that line item, so that we know that that's happening every year.
A couple things. They have total, if we treated it like it was, we were able to treat it like it is transportation money, where it is a separate line item, so that it can't be moved without town meeting approval, then I think that's fine. If it's within their budget and it's just we're putting aside X number of dollars for it, they have total control of that budget and they can move it all around. And I don't know the percentage that that's the minimum that we're required to do according to our contract. That might not be the appropriate amount. We might need to do more. And I don't, and I just, I think it's happened so many times in so many towns, that you don't put enough into your maintenance. And, you know, the MSBA puts a program in place, it has a minimum number, and it's based on your Chapter 70 formula and so on and so forth. But I just, from a nuts and bolts standpoint, and in a town our size, I would rather see a facilities director that oversees all the facilities we have. We have a public safety building that's overseen by a police chief or a fire chief with the help of a police chief that, again, expertise, you know, is in public safety and all that. It's not really in building maintenance. And that building's 15 years old now, or 10 years old now. And things are starting to go, you know, it's gonna need paint jobs soon. It's gonna, you know, we budgeting for that kind of stuff. I'm sure, and we've been told lots of times, other things, doorknobs start to go, and smaller things, I'm sure bigger things are gonna start to go soon. You got a library that's aging, you've got this building, you've got a council on aging that's an aging building, and maybe a different building at some point in the future. We have a lot of facilities here, and they're managed by compartmentalized people, as opposed to saying, look at how are we really taking care of our facilities here for the long run. So I'm just throwing it out there as I think that it's something that if the committee agrees with, then I think we should try to advocate for. And if the committee doesn't agree with it, then that's fine. But my take on
I
it.
agree with them using the money any way they want, but that's why my point is I think it should be a separate item. That, like the transportation, that we know is there, especially the town should know that since it's a brand new building, that the town is paying a lot of money for. And so I think the school should have an line item out there that we know maintenance is being kept up on a building that was a substantial cost to the citizens of this town. So I think we should request them to do that. Matter of fact, I think I'll bring it up in the permanent school building committee meeting as well.
And I think one thing that we would want to make sure we do with that is clearly define what is the difference between, you know, maintenance work and custodial work. You know, it's sweeping the floor isn't what we're talking about. Taking out the trash isn't what we're talking about. And I'm not a professional in this field. I'm sure there's clean definition somewhere about this is maintenance, this is, you know,
There's also, in the
Housekeeping,
process of this whole, with the building, everything that we're looking to do there, you know, the flooring and everything, the architect, they give us a schedule of what the.
Wax it this often,
what the
do
ma-
this,
right,
that.
So it's not like someone just gonna, I
Reseal
think
the
we should do it
windows
now.
after this many
There's an actual schedule that they tell you on every item that we're purchasing. It's one of the, we use it in considering what
to
we're
purchase,
gonna
yep.
use, what kind of floor we're gonna use by.
What's the maintenance
how much
cost?
the maintenance cost is gonna be, and it's gonna be a huge part of it, so I know that is there. It is there for them to follow. Which is why it'd be nice if it was a separate item, because they know what they have to do and when they have to do it.
So yeah, if you can work with what's the committee's take? I know that you and I are having a good discussion here, but.
I like both ideas. Sounds like we're going right down the middle.
No, I agree that it should be a separate line item, because I think we're doing a lot of cleanup, and we're now investing a lot of money in the town's taxes. And so I think I even brought it up way back when they presented it, is gotta make sure the maintenance plan is in place from, like, before day one. Even like the air handlers and that type of thing, you're actually starting maintenance on them before the building's turned over, because they're already turned on. So that maintenance plan, that should be ready, well, it has to be ready as the various components come online. And some of those come online before the building gets turned over, and you miss a cycle and you're already impinging on the newness of the building. And ideally, if the architect already came up with kind of what that schedule is, I don't know if he has dollar values, but you could start bidding contracts. Well, maybe not now, but when, this is supposed to open third or fourth quarter of 2017?
September. They'll be open time for the kids.
So,
We'll be
okay.
taking over in July of that year, so that the kids will be able to go to school there in September.
Yeah, so we're a little less than 2 years away, but like this time next year, they should already have a lot of that mapped out, because do not underscore what it takes to put that plan together, regardless of how much you think the architect
Has already done.
has already done. I'm living it right now, so that's why I'm sharing the issues.
I don't think we're in disagreement.
Yep.
I think, you know.
Yep.
Okay, so take that back to the permanent school building committee and, you know. What's that?
Pete, what did you say that number was for maintenance, a percentage of, is
I
it
thought, I thought it was 10%, but I don't remember 10% of what, but I'll
of the
get that.
school's budget?
No. It's not 10% of the school budget. And when you look at the Chapter 70 formula, so there's a formula that the state uses to figure out their state aid that they're gonna give us. In that formula, they calculate the cost per student, okay? And they use a bunch of formulas to do that. So it's, you know, there's administration, a teachers, a maintenance, an overhead, and so on. There's like 8 different categories. And then there's a different dollar value based on the grade level of that student. So a high school student has a higher teacher cost, say, than an elementary school student. So it's this real complicated formula. But in there, one of those costs is the maintenance cost. So one of those 8 categories. So they take that 8 costs per each number of students you have in each of those categories and they say, okay, your maintenance cost is X number of dollars based on this formula that we have. And so whatever that is, it's 10% of that number. So it's not 10% of the whole school budget or 10% of your state aid, it's 10% of what that, and if I remember correctly, it's a relatively low number, it's not huge. And there's other things we can do in terms of, even if it's not maintenance money that they spend right away, so say we're supposed to put $500,000 in there or something, and they only really need $200,000 when the building first opens to do it, you can actually take that money and you can set up a fund that you put that money into the fund. And then, so it's like a stabilization fund, so that it's a future, so that year that they have an $800,000 ask, you don't have to give them 800, you give 300 out of that, plus the 500 you already had. And there's certain things that the state, depending on when we set it up and how much that the MSBA will match, we might have already missed that target, but they would match certain percentage of what we put in there and things like that. Because again, they want to incentivize you to set your system up for success and maintenance and take care of your facilities, but I'll rely on our PSBC colleague to take it from there.
So the permanent
Yep.
school board committee will give us the number. For FY '18, it should be X. Is that where we're going?
Well, we can do, we could get right now, because we have what the FY '16 Chapter 70 number was, so we can say what it would have been if we had this plan in place, what the, because you won't know what FY '18 is, because it's based on the number of pupils and the pupils per grade, so they don't give you that number until March, and then, or March or April, and that's for the next fiscal year. But we can look historically where we were in FY '15, what the Chapter 70 number, what this formula was, what 10% of the maintenance was, FY '16, what 10% of the maintenance was, so we can get an idea of what historically that number's been. But I think the other part's gonna be, really gonna dig into it and say, have the director of facilities come in and, well, you know, what are they actually spending? Are they spending money on maintenance? And the maintenance, as you said many times, it's gonna be very different 2 years from now than what the maintenance is today, and patching holes and all that kind of stuff, and leaky pipes versus other things, and what are your costs gonna be then versus now, and that's where the experts come in. So there's a lot of unknown from looking historically what our state aid has been. All that is sort of a benchmark to say, we at least have to put aside, they have to put aside this much money for maintenance. But I get very concerned with it, mixed in with other things, and you can classify things as maintenance, and, you know, they're, I don't know.
So this is a discussion we should start in FY '17.
I think we should start it now. I think we are, but I think we have to really continue it as part of this budget cycle. That, yes, that is FY '17, yes, you're right. Yeah, I think we have to start it now. Not necessarily that the goal is at FY '17, we would put that money aside, per se. Maybe we do, to Susan's point, that if the building's gonna get, you know, turned over at the end of, or we'll need maintenance costs at the end of FY '17 to take care of the building, even though we're taking it over technically in FY '18. You know, it's gonna be a balancing act for us. But, so we need to start having that discussion now. And what the permanent school buildings committee take is on it, and obviously I think we'll go from there. Anything else for us for tonight? I would ask that people kind of review those documents, whether it's typo errors or content things or whatever. Try to get them back to me, because what I'll try to do is put them together so we are looking at a final version or a final draft version 2 weeks from tonight, and that way we can just approve it and get it out to town meeting, or to the department heads before the end of October. So, right after that meeting, if we're good to go.
We're probably gonna have a department head meeting around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of October, so.
That's perfect.
If you wanna get it, we can discuss it then, and Cindy will give an overview.
Yeah, I mean, our goal, we're meeting again on October 19th, and our intent is that at that meeting, we would be approving the final documents, so that department heads would have them, by the end of that week. So, and I imagine we're gonna approve it pretty quick and get them out by that Wednesday, the 21st or something like that.
I did get through it just quick, I didn't see any typos, and that was me, so I shouldn't look at it either.
No, I didn't either, but just, if somebody wants a
I
comment
was
somewhere or
super
something.
prepared for today for some reason, I was saying, I was there early, I was prepared, it was great.
Just one last thing, Kevin. I won't
Yeah.
be here on 10/19, so we'll be looking for a volunteer for meeting minutes.
Mm-hmm,
I'll shoot you the template and
mm-hmm.
distribute as needed.
Who's missing?
Associate chairman job.
Anything else for this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Oh, wait,
No,
Oh,
can you withdraw your
I
motion?
withdraw my motion.
Can we approve the minutes of our meeting,
seconded.
last Monday? Was 9:20?
9:28.
9:20.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any more discussion? All right.
And then what about the 30th?
So the 30th, we have to do that too?
Because we did have one vote.
We did have a vote, yeah. So is there a motion to approve the minutes of the September 30th, that's Wednesday town meeting?
So moved, seconded.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Thanks,
Also,
Kevin. Totally forgot about that.
Thank you.
Show you how I go, what did I actually, the minutes, oh, we're gonna approve the minutes, let me read them, guess there's something in there.
You read them already, you got
I'm telling you, I was so prepared for
You
today.
didn't get them?
Remember tonight.
I have it here.